Airport. This is a flight pattern. It's known that planes come down this area and land. This is known. Why were they in that area? Why would you have a practice training in that area? How could this happen? Something doesn't seem right. Well, these are all the questions that most of us ask who are civilians, who are not pilots of airplanes or helicopters, or who have never been in a helicopter. Now, I've flown in and out of Reagan National Airport many, many, many times. But I've never been in a helicopter over that area. However, my first guest has, Colonel Rob Maness. He's a former commander of Kirkland Air Force Base, Air Force navigator. He has been in a helicopter over that area many, many times. And he'll talk to us about, well, this tragedy. And then we're going to talk with Dr. Rob Lindsted. The flight originated in Wichita, Kansas. And of course, I didn't want to call him too late last night, but this morning I called, one of my first phone calls was to Dr. Rob Lindsted. I said, tell me you don't know anybody on that flight. Not only did he share with me some very interesting news, it was kind of chilling. That was a flight that a bunch of his coaches and kids at his Christian school could have easily been on, and a flight that was considered. But his team flew in on that same flight or that same route from Wichita to D.C. yesterday morning. Providentially, they did not choose that flight, thankfully. They chose the one that morning, yesterday morning. And then we found out from Dr. Rob that some of his teachers and students, they had bought tickets and watched some of the skaters who now, we are told, perished in that flight. All of that we'll cover. And then we'll get an update from Aaron on the ground, because we have, I think, at least another 3 hostages released by Hamas. One of the female hostages dragged through the center of Hamas terrorists in what had to be an absolutely petrifying experience. Israel, their nation, many of their citizens are irate. We understand Benjamin Netanyahu even paused the release of some of the Palestinians until they can get guarantees that that kind of thing will not happen again for the safety of their hostages being released. We have a lot to get to. Let's get right to it. Let's go first to Colonel Rob Maness. Colonel, welcome back to Brandon House Live. Worldview, that's at night. Welcome back to Worldview Radio. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me on, Brandon.
All right, so you and Rob Lindsted were 2 of the first people I called this morning, and I wanted your perspective because having been stationed at the Pentagon, having been a navigator for the Air Force, I knew you would have experience knowing and helping me as a civilian understand what I'm seeing. And we had a great conversation. I said, our audience needs to hear this as well. You have been up in a helicopter over those very skies, several times. Tell us about your personal experience, what it's like, particularly at night, and how this could have happened. Because to the civilian watching it, of course, we're thinking, how could this military, particularly when these guys were supposedly, some of the best, we've been told, who were just doing a routine training, how could this have happened? And it appears to us, looking at it on TV, they just ran right into them. But there's a lot of things to be considered as far as altitude and who's ascending, who's descending, that doesn't come across when we're just watching the footage of the crash. Talk to our audience about all this, please.
Yeah, that's right. First of all, it's not unusual at all for military helicopters to be got it. Sorry, is my audio okay?
Your audio okay, guys?
Yeah, we got it now.
You're good.
Yeah, it's not unusual for military helicopters to be traversing this airspace. This airspace is the most tightly controlled airspace in the world from a radar, from a radio, and from a visual perspective. The routing that these particular helicopters are taking are visual routes primarily. They're very low altitude above the ground. You may hear the term AGL, that's altitude above ground level. So generally they're about 100 feet ceiling, so they should have been well below the flight path and the glide slope of the airliner that was coming in on runway 33. Now we know. And unfortunately, they even acknowledged the radio call from the tower controller that asked if they had a visual on the aircraft and directed them to follow behind the aircraft. And they acknowledged that they had a visual contact with the airliner and that requested visual separation is the words that I heard from the helicopter pilot that was talking on the radio. So all of that is standard operating procedure. You've heard Sean Duffy, the Secretary of Transportation, say that multiple times. All of that is normal. None of this operation is abnormal. As a matter of fact, the training mission, which we're hearing now, it sounds like it was a check ride or a proficiency test mission, is a requirement for pilots that fly in that airspace to do at night. They have to accomplish a proficiency flight at night to prove that they can safely fly these routes and within this airspace. No matter how experienced they are, a check ride is accomplished every year on every pilot.
Well, what's really sad is
that is not even unusual.
But what's sad is they actually failed the test.
Well, the ultimate failure is if you have a tragic accident like what we saw today. The other thing I would point out with the video that everybody is seeing, that's a one-dimensional video.
Right.
As somebody that's flown in the third seat many, many times, thousands of hours in aircraft as a navigator, jet aircraft, flying in the third seat and providing the backup for visual recognition, visual contact, and visual avoidance to help the pilots do what's called see and avoid when they're operating, especially under visual flight rules like this helicopter was. So there's a third person there. In this case, they had a crew chief apparently on board, according to what Secretary of Defense Hegseth has revealed. So far, there were 3 crew members: a warrant officer pilot, an officer pilot, and a enlisted crew chief. So the crew chief would have been helping assist to look out through the windscreen of the aircraft and identify potential traffic and call out maneuvers if necessary at the last minute. None of that is abnormal, and it should have been occurring. The interesting thing about the video that we're seeing is you see the third aircraft traffic, which is departing aircraft out of Reagan National. And that's one of my questions is if the helicopter pilot acknowledged that he had the regional jet in sight, asked for visual separation from the tower controller issued instructions to follow behind that aircraft. What aircraft was that pilot looking at? That's a big question, I think, that I've heard other aviation professionals that have done this business like I have ask. Was he visual on the proper aircraft traffic? And if he wasn't, why wasn't he? And that's a big question. The other big question is, how proficient was the tower controller and the air traffic controllers? Because these aircraft are seen on radar, whether they're following visual flight rules or not. Like I said, this traffic pattern here in this airport is the most tightly controlled airspace in the world, because 3 miles north, you have the White House. Just a few miles to the east, you have the Capitol. Less than a mile to the west, you have the Pentagon. So every single thing that moves is hyper watched. Every operator, every pilot, every navigator, every flight engineer, every crew chief that's flying in this airspace is hyper vigilant. So obviously something went wrong here, and they failed the test. It is exactly right. That's exactly what happened. And This is what happens when you fail in aviation.
President Trump says that Pete Buttigieg ran the FAA right into the ground with diversity. He also today, in his press briefing that we carried live, put some onus on American Airlines and DEI. This was not well received by the CNN reporter in the press room. He said that, in fact, Logan, I don't know if you can find it. He said that's a what did he say? That's a stupid question, but I'm not shocked coming from you. I think that's what President Trump said to her. But
I think the CNN reporter called him a liar because the president's administration, the previous administration, changed the Obama administration's hiring rules for the FAA, which focused on making a diverse population of professions like air traffic controllers, which is the key one here, that we know that air traffic control in this accident is going to have played a key role. Changed it from merit-based and in hiring the best quality people from a professional perspective to things like skin color, gender, whether you're in the LGBTQ community. When you prioritize those as factors for hiring people, you're not hiring your best. Now, what the president was saying was, and CNN accused him of saying, well, that's what caused this accident. But what he's saying is what all of us aviation professionals are saying, is you have to incorporate that into your investigation, both your safety investigation and the accident investigation, which are two separate things. And if you don't incorporate that look at how people were hired into the investigation, then you're doing a disservice to those aviators and their families of people that died and the follow-on passengers in the future, because that's what we want to do with these investigations, is have this never happen again.
Right.
And because the Biden administration changed the Trump administration's change back to the model that Obama was following, except for it was on steroids, using the full power of the government to hire people based on their race, their gender, or whether they're LGBTQ or whatever, instead of their qualifications, their test scores on aptitude tests, which have been used for the entire time that air traffic control has been in existence to great effect. We've got to look at that, and that's got to be looked at specifically for this, because we know the controllers are involved.
Indeed. All right, I want to come back, play a clip by President Trump, and then we will go to Dr. Rob Lindsted, whose basketball team, I don't know if you guys know this, I mean, this is amazing. Sunrise Christian School, their basketball team is like the 12th rated basketball team of high school students in America. They took a flight yesterday morning from Wichita to D.C. Thankfully, they didn't take the flight from Wichita to D.C. last night, but we'll get to that with Dr. Rob Lindsted, and then Aaron checking in live from Israel. We'll be right back. Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at WVWFoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at WVWFoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at WVWFoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview. All right, welcome back. Glad you're with us, Worldview Radio. Let me go to a clip of President Trump here on my computer real quick, Logan. Keep your finger on the button, Dalton, if you would, please. I think this one is curse-free. But he says something about the FAA that we reported on the Worldview Report months and months ago. If this quote in print is what he actually said, good for President Trump, because I'm sure most Americans aren't aware of what he's about to say. Here we go.
Have more to say about that. I do want to point out that various articles that appeared prior to my entering office, and here's one. The FAA's diversity push includes focus on hiring people with severe intellectual and psychiatric disabilities.
Okay, that's exactly what we reported on the Worldview Report with Leo Holman months ago. Thank you, President Trump, for appearing at the White House podium in the press briefing room and telling this to the American people. Ideas have consequences. Your worldview matters. Colonel, your response, please.
Oh, you're absolutely right. That's why, months ago, even years back, those of us in the aviation profession, both active and retired, have been yelling about this this hiring practice. Not just in the FAA, but the airlines picked up the DEI hiring practices too, and it's just extremely dangerous. And this accident, let's hope that none of that is a factor, but it's got to be looked at. All the air crews, all the maintenance people, all the air traffic controllers, everybody has to be looked at from the perspective of how they were hired. And we go back through all of their training records. In a fatal accident like this, you look at a pilot, for instance, all the way back to when he was in basic flying training, to see if you could see some kind of trend that could have led to this accident. We've got to do the same thing in the hiring practices of these people, because you don't know for sure that we're hiring the best right now. The Trump administration and the 45 presidency had the meritocracy hiring practices, and they have it again now. The president signed an executive order just days ago correcting all of this, but you had 8 years of Obama and 4 years of Biden, especially the 4 years of Biden, where they really pushed up the throttles on this type of hiring practice, where all of these issues have to be looked at very, very closely to see if they cause this accident. Because I'll say it again, the point of the investigations is not to blame people, not to, charge people in criminal court, although that can be an outcome. It's to stop this from ever happening again. And this should not have happened. And we haven't had an accident like this in America in 16 years. So this accident should not have happened. Do we know for sure that DEI hiring practices had an impact on the accident? No, we don't. But we have to fully and thoroughly investigate it to rule that out or in, so that we can make corrections in our processes.
Indeed. All right, Colonel, every day, 2 o'clock, worldviewtube.com, and on demand, worldviewtube.com. Thank you for your service, and thank you for helping us lay people understand some of this and what we saw. You helped to answer a lot of questions. Thank you, Colonel.
Thank you, Brandon. On today's show, we'll be talking about the Defense Department's approach to restoring Americans' faith in our lethality and getting away from this type of hiring practice. So this will be discussed again there.
Absolutely. Good for you. Thank you, Colonel. And by the way, come here, Colonel Manus, live in person if you're anywhere in the Mid-South or near the Mid-South, or it'd be worth flying in. I think someone's already got a ticket coming in from Arizona. And if you want to be a part of our, what we're calling State of the Union panel, it's Saturday night, February 22nd. Saturday night, February 22nd, our State of the Union panel, live with a live studio audience in a theater in the Mid-South. It's Colonel Rob Manus, and it's also J.J. Carroll and Todd Bensman. Again, you can be with us in studio on that Saturday night, February 22nd. Tickets are only $5. We're only charging that nominal fee, not trying to make money. We're just doing it to collect a database to invite you to come to other live events, and also to have you on a list so we can vet everybody coming through the building. So again, please let your family and friends know that maybe even live within a few hours of the Mid-South, Memphis, Tennessee, and they can join us. But we'd love for you to join us. Worldviewstore.com, that's a new URL we've got now, worldviewstore.com, to secure your seat to be a part of that live event. Now, if you are a member of our vault, you'll be able to live stream it. It will be a premium event for members only. You can find out more about joining and having access to our 35 years of my books, radio shows, TV shows, documentaries, conferences, and more. Worldviewtube.com/vault. And if you have a membership, you'll be able to live stream that event exclusively on that Saturday night. Worldviewtube.com/vault. Well, we are thankful today for God's providential protection for Dr. Rob Lindsted team. He has a basketball team that is rated the 12th, I'm told, 12th standing team in the nation, high school players. In fact, I think they have 3 of their graduates that are now in the National Basketball Association, or NBA. His team was going in from Wichita to D.C. They thankfully chose the flight yesterday morning, not that flight last night. Some of their staff and students were at the skating event. They bought tickets. They were there watching skate. Sadly, now some of the skaters, at least 2 that we know of, that are now deceased from that crash. Joining me now is Dr. Rob Lindsted from Wichita, Kansas. Dr. Lindsted, thank you for being with us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Be with you.
Kind of chilling how close your team came to being on the wrong flight.
Yes, it was a pretty somber mood at the school today because not everyone knew that they took the morning flight. They knew that they had to play today, so they were trying to decide when to go. And by God's grace, they decided to go in the morning. I saw them as they loaded the bus to go to the airport to take the flight from Wichita to D.C. And but after church services last night, I began to get texts saying, was your team on go to Wichita? And I said, yeah, they did. But fortunately, they left in the morning. So pretty somber mood around the school to think that that these guys are such an active part of the student body, and of course my son, my nephew was on that flight with them, and as you can see, probably about 20 people in total. And so yeah, it was a real reality check for us.
I bet it was. 12th rated high school team in the nation, is that right?
Yes, as you look at them, you can see that they're not average height. I think we have a couple 7-footers, and then I think there may be 5 or 6 that are 6'6" to 6'10", and yeah, it's quite a collection. My son is the one in the middle holding the basketball. He graduated from Sunrise, and he coached at 2 D1 universities. Came back to Sunrise because his younger children are still students here, and he just felt like he needed to spend time with them. So later tonight.
Your son has built quite the basketball team. My boys in the control room, they tell me that there's one NBA player that was playing at the Christian school that one of my kids went to for a while. Literally, I mean, it's a couple miles down the road from where I'm sitting, the Christian school. Mm-hmm. It was the Christian school that was made famous in the movie about the football player that went there too, the NFL football player, Blindside. That's just right down the road from us. And there was a young man that played there who apparently got recruited to leave and come to Wichita and go to Sunrise Christian because you have such a great team that the NBA watches. They're watching your high school Christian team. And he left this school, Briarcrest on the street, I'm told, went to Sunrise, your school, where you're the superintendent, and then from there got recruited to the NBA. So apparently the guys in the control room, they are very aware of your school. They're very aware of your team. They're very aware of your coach, your son. They're very aware of the guys that have gone to the NBA. So apparently for folks that follow sports, your team is really on the radar. And of course, I'm not a sports guy. I knew your team was good and you had some NBA players, but I didn't realize how good and that your son was one that built the team.
Yes, I think I may not have the numbers completely right, but I think in the last 15 years we've had 84 Division I men's basketball players. And so a couple of years ago, my wife and I went to the Final Four because we had, I think, 6 of our guys were playing in the Final Four in the NCAA. And we had kids on both sides, and so you have to decide what T-shirt you're going to wear at what time.
Maybe you wear one half the game and the other half the other.
Oh yeah, but I'll tell you what's exciting. I don't think I'll get in trouble if I mention this, but many people have heard of Grady Dick. Grady Dick's having a great year for the Toronto Raptors, and this is his second year in the league, and he's just incredible and got a great 3-point touch. He was one and done at Kansas University. And but what's neat is his testimony. This is a godly young man. No doubt that Christ has affected his life. And we have another young man who's on the Chicago Bulls, and then Buddy Hell, who's actually leading some of the 3-point categories in the NBA. And we've had a number of, I think there's 4 this year in the G League. That's kind of the minor leagues for the pros. And so, yeah, the basketball heritage here is really fun and great. But if you take a look at that group, every Wednesday night after there's Buddy. Buddy's been with me to Israel. His whole family went to Israel. And from time to time, Buddy sends me a question on Bible prophecy. And we've had a couple others. Another young man by the name of Tumpton. Yeah, there's Grady. And yeah, Grady's, it's just fun to see people that have a perspective of life that's bigger than that basketball. And that's what we try to give them. It's hard when a kid is this talented. You look at that picture, and my guess is that half of those kids there will end up, I shouldn't call them kids, half of these young men will probably play in professional basketball in some capacity, whether America or in Europe, or the NBA or G League.
What a great testimony for your son, your school, those young men. I think you and I have been friends now for 30 years, at least now. And I think you and I are the same way in that we want to represent a Christian worldview, but we want to do it with excellence, right? We don't want, cheesy production, embarrassing production. We want to look just like the networks. And I think we do now, and we have for a while. In fact, some say you look better than this network, that work, and that network. And I'm like, yeah, that's pretty true. We do. So you've done that with your school. You have sought to have excellence and to be excellent. And what a testimony that Christians can compete in the arena of sports, academics, media, and we can do it at the same level as the secular organizations and schools and media outlets. I love that.
On Wednesday nights after my regular church service at the local church I go to, then I go across the street to the school. And I have these boys, and I have a post-grad team. I think they're ranked 7th in the country. Then I have other international students, and we have a Bible study. There's usually about 70 of us together. And some of these kids have come to know Christ during these Bible studies. And the questions that they ask me are wonderful questions, because I can see that God is preparing them for the next step in life. That's really exciting, as you say, to prepare that generation for that.
Indeed it is. I want to talk about some of your students and teachers and staff that saw some of these skaters this weekend. I know that at least 2 of them now, these skaters, I think a husband and wife team, perished in the crash, sadly. I want you to comment on that. And then we're going to be joined in our conversation, Dr. Lindsted, by Aaron from Israel with breaking news. We'll be right back. Hello, I'm Brandon House. Melissa and I have been taking Bella Grace, this powerful elixir, since last fall, 2023. The results have been amazing. My hands would crack and bleed, deep cuts and cracks every winter for years. No matter what we did, we couldn't get them to stop cracking and bleeding. This year, I took Bella Grace, no cracking, no bleeding. My acid reflux, gone. Haven't had to take a Pepsid. My hair growth, the last 2 times I had my hair cut, the lady had to use thinning shears on my hair. That's amazing. We've also received incredible feedback from you, our listening audience, and the impact it's had for you. This is loaded with astaxanthin. That's a powerful antioxidant. Collagen, but top grade collagen. Studies show 95% of it is being absorbed in the body because of the way they develop it. Then we have something called cat's claw. That's an anti-inflammatory from a vine in Peru. It's the bark, and it's an anti-inflammatory. There are about 80 clinical trials on Bella Grace. Please get a subscription now and save. MelissaHouseBG.com. All right, welcome back. Glad you're with us. Worldview Radio, our website, worldviewradio.com. I hope you will join Crosstalk at 2 p.m. Central, 3 Eastern here on the VCY America Radio Network. That's the I think 73 terrestrial stations we're on. And of course, we're on WROS out of Jacksonville, so that makes 74. And then, of course, we're here with you on Worldview Tube and then all the other platforms that are picking this up now. And we're so thankful for VCY. So I hope you will stay tuned for Jim Schneider's Crosstalks, marking 40 years in broadcast ministry yesterday. So he's the host of Crosstalk. It's America's original Christian talk program since the 1970s. So I hope you'll stay tuned. Well, on over 100 outlets each and every day. And their website is V as in Victor, vcy.org, vcy.org. Tonight, I will have full coverage on Brandon House Live on the hearings by for Kash Patel, they're trying to, the Trump administration is trying to get him confirmed as the FBI director. I pray they do. Can you imagine the boomerang going from Christopher Wray to Kash Patel? What a 180-degree turn, because Kash Patel has been a vocal critic of the FBI and what they have done and what has happened to him personally and what has happened to private citizens as well. He has, however, taken a beating today by many of the progressive Marxists. We'll have some clips and commentary with some experts, guests tonight on that during Brandon House Live. We've been carrying that, by the way, in our second box, our breaking news box. We had the crash up there last night, by the way, as well. We were covering that right away last night in the breaking news box. Again, we are endeavoring to be a news network 24/7 that you can depend on for Christian news and analysis, and yet also the news around the world that's breaking. So 2 boxes now. One is our 24/7 stream. The other is our breaking news box. And again, we were carrying both Tulsi Gabbard's hearing today as well as Kash Patel. I think we're carrying Kash Patel's right now in the breaking news box. Again, all of this is brought to you in part because we're pushing it out for free by our foundation, worldviewfoundation.com. Last night on Brandon House Live, I went extensively with our guests, as I do over and over. We don't take breaks. We just keep talking because it's about the content. And of course, we're able to keep pushing out content and not worry about breaks because, again, we're brought to you by you, our broadcast service, education, and ministry through the foundation, worldviewfoundation.com. So thank you for that. But there we have that breaking news box. We'll also be posting some of the breaking news stories. I texted with one of our guys who worked with us for a while. They went to another occupation, texted with him this morning and said, you might want to come back. Would you be willing to come back? We need you to cut clips and put up clips on demand of the breaking news. So we are working to add some staff again, some more staffing to take breaking news that maybe you didn't get a chance to see live as it was breaking in that second box, and then put it up in a breaking news on-demand feed. Again, we joined a pool footage feed. It costs about $1,300 a month, but it gives us breaking news footage from literally all over the world. Oftentimes now, since we launched that last week, I have seen the footage we're carrying. It's identical to what the major networks are carrying. The exact same picture, the exact same camera. It's coming from the same pool footage that they belong to. We now have bought and belong to, again, thanks to your participation with us through our foundation, worldviewfoundation.com. Joining me now is, again, Dr. Rob Lindsted. Before we join, Aaron joins us from Israel with breaking news there. Dr. Lindsted, before we go and add Aaron to the conversation, your staff, some of your staff and students actually went and saw some figure skaters this week. I guess there was a big national competition in Wichita, and some of your staff and students bought the tickets and sadly saw some figure skaters skate for the last time who perished in that crash last night. Is that true?
The National Figure Skating competition was there. And of course, the reason why everyone wanted to go and see it is because the future Olympians usually are on that tour, and for sure they were. And so they have young stars coming up. They have some who have already are national champions, and then coaches are there. And matter of fact, I think when the final list is released, we're going to find that there's probably several coaches. I don't think I'm telling anything out of turn, but it looks like maybe some of the coaches from Boston, Massachusetts were in the crowd. There could have been some international coaches there as well. And they were all there, part of either getting their figure skaters qualified or talking to trainers and other things. So big exchange of information that occurs. And so if I remember correctly, that was, I think, Saturday night when that skating performance was done. And so we had both faculty, we had some students, even some of our international students were so excited to see this competition. Another fellow who's my architect for the school and does other things as well, but he and his wife were in attendance. And so again, a very sobering effect to think, okay, we just watched them skate for the last time. None of these people that were on that flight are gonna skate again. They're in eternity. And that's contributing as well to the somber mood at the school as we think about, wow, that looked like a regular weekend, a regular wonderful evening, great entertainment, and then all of a sudden you read these people are in eternity.
Yeah. So your school today your students have had contact with their classmates who thankfully got on yesterday morning's flight, not last night's, and your students and staff had contact over the weekend with people that were on that flight. And again, speak to this before we go to Aaron. For anyone watching, anyone listening, I don't care what your income is. I don't care how popular you are, how famous you are, how rich you are, how smart you think you are. On day of judgment, on the day of eternity, when you finally leave this planet, expectedly or unexpectedly, how do they guarantee they can go into the presence of God?
Yeah. Well, it's a reality check, because I think most of the time people who are young and healthy, very active, some of these kids are in incredible physical condition. So in their mind, they're going to live a long time, but they don't realize that life serves some situations like this. In an instant of time, it can change. And as my son was texting me this morning, I was just thinking about, wow, how different that would be if he would have been on that flight. I mean, he's the father of 5 children, and he lives there close to me on the school grounds, and then all of a sudden, his life has changed, and he's in the prime of his life. But that happens, and we never count on that. Nobody does.
Well, tell our audience how they can guarantee to pass from this life into heaven.
Well, that's the key. That's the key thing. This life is a dressing room, and the point of this life is to be ready to go into eternity. And I think that's why. That's really why I enjoy working with the international students, because many of them came to us and maybe they didn't have a Christian point of view. We've had you can't name a religion that we haven't had. And throughout the course of the year, we have the opportunity to say, here's what the Bible says. Compare that to what your worldview is. And it's pretty exciting when you see these young people come to accept Christ and then be bold enough to say, you know what, I'm a Christian. I've changed my worldview. And so I think that's what life is all about. When everything is said and done, the only thing that's going to matter really is eternity, and did a person receive Christ? And so I would say intellectually, I would have loved to stay at the university. I love math. I love engineering. You don't have to pay me to do math. I would pay you to do math. But the trouble is, it doesn't matter in eternity. What matters in eternity is if people come to know Jesus Christ as their personal Savior. And so there came a time when my wife and I decided that that's more important to us than doing research, than being at a university. And that's really how Sunrise came into existence.
Amazing, amazing. So today, my friend, if you're listening, all you got to do is, says in the Bible, believe on the name of the Lord Jesus Christ and thou shalt be saved. Just place your faith and trust, acknowledging that you cannot save yourself. You're not a good person. I'm not. No, I'm not. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. We can never measure up to the sinless, perfect character and nature of God. That's the standard, his moral law, his character. But here's the good news. We don't have to. He measured up for us. He placed his life on a cross for us so that his righteous life could be imputed or credited to our account as though we lived his righteous life, and he took our sins upon him as though he lived our sinful life, although he did not. The Bible says, he who knew no sin became, as it were, sin for us, that we might become part of the righteousness of God. That's it. Repent means simply change your mind. Change your mind about who you are, what you deserve. You're a sinner, like I am, depraved, even conceived in sin. The heart's desperately wicked above all else. Who can know it? And who I am, a sinner, what I am, depraved, what I deserve, hell. But you can pass from judgment into life by simply acknowledging, no, I'm not a good person. No, I can't save myself. I can't do enough good to meet up to the character and nature of God. I was born in sin. But he placed his life on the cross as payment of my sins, and I receive it and accept it as the only way of salvation by surrendering my life and heart to Christ alone. And you believe in his death and his burial, resurrection, and his payment of your sins on the cross. And the Bible says, if you believe in the name, believe in, put your faith and trust in, you're saved. That's it. That's justification. Then sanctification, ongoing faithfulness and obedience, studying your Bible, learning about the things of the Lord. So this should be a wake-up call for all of us. Let's go quickly to Aaron in Israel. Aaron, thank you for being with us. Tragedy has struck in the U.S. Last night. It's a great opportunity to take what's common in the culture, turn it into a pulpit. We've done that, but we also have a tragedy that continues to unfold in Israel, the release of your hostages. Today, 3 have been released, and yet what was most disturbing is the video footage of one of the gals being dragged through a mob of Hamas terrorists. And your country is angry today, and your prime minister put a halt on release of more of their people, correct?
Yeah, we did, Brandon. It was a really tough day. We've been waiting to see 3 of our hostages come out. By the way, there were 6 Thai workers also that were released. And the Prime Minister of Thailand profusely thanked our President Herzog for the mediation there. But we were so enraged to see the way that these Hamas animals treated these people by humiliating them, putting them up on a stage, giving them an official Hamas release, a terrorist release, as if Hamas are a political recognized entity, to having to see that. And then the 110 prisoners that we released today, 30 of them, Brandon, were repeated murderers. And then there was about another 30 that were serious offenders. And I could go on, giving you things that they did, the second intifada, bombings here, bombings there, terrorism here. It was, and everywhere I go, everyone's talking about it, and people, it's so painful. It's it's opening up so much wounds and pain, and it.
Well, let's get to that when we come back, including the picture of the young woman smashed in with a Hamas terrorist. We'll be right back. Hello, I'm Brandon House. Is the government tracking you? Do they have access to all your data? Well, if you go to worldviewtalk.com, you'll find out about a cell phone company that, does not store your data. They don't do that. This is what they're known for. They don't store your data. You have privacy. You're not being tracked. That's why a lot of folks are turning to worldviewtalk.com. You'll find their prices are very competitive. All the details are there at worldviewtalk.com. Again, worldviewtalk.com. Oh, while you're there, not only do they have cell phones that aren't tracking you, you can find out about how to get a satellite phone. Should the whole system go down and you want to communicate with a family member or a loved one, you might want to have a satellite phone. Or how about their solar generators? They have great solar generators. Check them all out right now. Worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com. All right, welcome back. Before the break, we showed a picture of one of the female hostages being pushed through a crowd of Hamas terrorists. There's another guy, Aaron, he's 80 years old. This is shocking footage of this 80-year-old man. Tell us who this man is, having to fight his way through a crowd of Hamas terrorists with their black outfits, their green bands, their weapons. I mean, this is disgusting. But then again, I'm sorry. I mean, this is a disgusting people. This is why nobody wants them, okay? Jordan doesn't want them. Egypt doesn't want them. Everybody knows they're debased. They're darkened-hearted. These are terrorists. I think many of these people, their conscience has been seared as with a hot iron. There's no hope for them spiritually, for some of them. There just isn't. They've tipped over. And who would want them? Why would you want these people in your country? And they prove it again and again with stunts like this, even though they're getting like 30 to 1, 50 to 1, and then they turn around and treat an 80-year-old man like this on his exit. I mean, why? Again, they should be thankful that I'm not the prime minister, because I would have carpet bombed that entire Palestinian region a long time ago and cleaned it out and turned it in and invited Donald Trump's team to come in and build hotels or whoever Israel wanted to work with. But I'll tell you something. I was reading a bio last night on Dick Armey. I've had Dick Armey speak at my Worldview Weekend in Dallas, and I wanted to see what he's up to. He's about 84 now. Back during the Bush administration, he was saying we should clean out Palestine, get rid of them all, get rid of all of them out of Palestine. That was during the George W. Bush administration. This right here proves it. These are not reasonable people. It really makes me angry, and I'm not even Jewish. Go ahead, Aaron.
Pictures speak for themselves, Brandon. Look at the 80-year-old defenseless man. He was captured on October the 7th, been living in disgusting, hellish conditions. You know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of footage of the Nazis beating and mutilating Jews in Europe during the Holocaust. Nothing different, but there's no difference between this 80-year-old man or a 20-year-old girl or a 3-month-old baby. Wake up, Western world, to these kind of people. Hamas are a terrorist organization. There's no justification for it.
No. And Dr. Lindsted, I don't know, again, last night I came across a picture of myself with Dick Armey, former U.S. House Majority Leader. He spoke for us for our Worldview Weekend in Dallas while he was the U.S. House Majority Leader. He was very kind to us. And I just wonder what he's up to. And I looked up his bio. I think he's like 84. And as I said, I'd forgotten. He, back in the Bush administration, was saying, clean out Palestine. Get rid of them. Clean it out. They don't need to be there. Whoa, he really was ahead of his time, was he not, Rob?
And you know what? Here's the thing: the terrorist point of view is so, I can say, anti-humane. It's anti-Bible. It's anti-humane, and yet that's being propagated. My fear is this: right now, they believe that they're winning. They didn't win with missiles and with bombs, but they won the war. Why? Because look what they're getting. You know, what we're wanting are children and women and people released, none of which did a crime. On October 7th, none of which did a crime. And so what do they want? Well, they want up to 1,200 terrorists. Some of them have murdered 48 people. And so look at the exchange. This exchange that took place, 110 to 3 or 4. That's ridiculous. Why would we say that a terrorist who's killed 48 people is worth more than an innocent child, and yet the child cannot be released? This man cannot be released. There's something wrong. So that's how come they're winning the war. They're using this to recruit. They say that really the world's afraid of them. They've got these people believing that they're controlling the world. They're not. And so somehow that point of view has got to be conveyed to them and to the young recruits that they're getting by the dozens.
Indeed. Aaron, we have your prime minister coming to D.C. This week. I think he's on Wednesday supposed to speak to a joint session of Congress, which we will be covering. He'll also be going to the White House to meet with President Trump. This will be the first foreign leader to come to the White House for Donald Trump's second term, which speaks volumes. We're going to be covering it next week with you and with Dr. Lindsted, but speak to this, please.
Well, Gaza is on the table, the issue of Gaza, the issue of Lebanon, the issue of Iran, and the issue of Saudi Arabia. They are the 4 key points that are going to be talked about. So big topics, every single one of them. Let's see. I think we're going to find out some interesting news after those talks. Can I just say one thing that Dr. Rob said when he talked about this hostage exchange, and he said there's something wrong. And I totally agree. And what I believe that wrong is, we need to diffuse Hamas from having this power over us. I believe we should legislate a law saying that if anyone in the future gets kidnapped, I'm sorry, that's the price of a Jew living in Israel. We're at war, even in times of peace. We're at war. If people get kidnapped, we're sorry. We are not going to negotiate any more with terrorists. We need to make that statement, and that way they won't have this over us. It is destroying us. It's bringing division. So many people that are talking about it. Some people are now angry with the government again. The same people that were crying out, Netanyahu, you're not doing enough to release the captives. Now he's doing it. They're angry with him. So it's a terrible situation.
And let me again say, as with this, we've been warning on this broadcast, Dr. Lindsted and I and others, America, our October 7th has yet to occur. I pray it doesn't, but I think it will. We are going to see an October 7th type of event. All of these military-age males are not here to go to Disney World, okay? They're not here to get fat and lazy and Americanized. They're here to kill. When those orders will go down, I don't know. But we have warned this audience over and over that we are very concerned about Mexico and all the terrorists that are come through Mexico and the drug cartels who work with the CCP, the Mexican drug cartels who get their precursor chemicals for their fentanyl from the CCP. We have a red-green axis, the red, the Marxist, the green, the Islamist. We have a red-green axis in Canada. We have a red-green axis in Mexico. We are surrounded on our borders, and our October 7th event, I pray, doesn't happen, but I fear it will. Closing comment, Dr. Rob.
Well, if you look, what's changed? We stopped the war, and when we stopped the war, all we did is allow them to reload. All we did was allow them to humiliate the people that were kidnapped, that were innocent victims. And so they won a propaganda war, and they won, in their mind, they're on the winning side. We've got to show that that's not the correct point of view, and we've got to be a little bit tougher to stand our ground.
Hold right there, guys. Don't go away. Stay tuned for Crosstalk, folks. Thanks for listening. Take care. And that's our broadcast. On those stations, we're back with WROS out of Jacksonville, Florida, and, of course, here on Worldview Tube. Let's go back to Rob and to Aaron. What else is in the news? I'll come back to this clip, or this one here. Benjamin Netanyahu is saying that what happened to those hostages is unimaginable cruelty. And of course, I think this held up you guys releasing some of their people, some of their terrorists, some of their folks that they've negotiated for, right? He said, we're holding that up until we got guarantees this never happens again, correct?
No, what we did is when we saw our captives humiliated, we put a halt, and then we asked for guarantees that the next load of captives that come back, that they will not be humiliated. They agreed. So at 5 o'clock this afternoon, we released the prisoners.
Okay. Well, there you go. Let's see here. What else do we have? President Trump sending worst, most dangerous illegals to Gitmo. Have you guys, all this advertising that pops up. Have you guys seen that? I think that's a pretty smart idea. We're finally using Gitmo again, and this time for these folks, the most dangerous illegals going to Gitmo. What are your thoughts on this, Dr. Rob?
Well, I think it's a great use of the territory there. And but isn't it interesting that when Columbia said, okay, we're not going to take these people back. I have some kids in my school from Columbia, and they were just, wow, we're never going to have visas and so on like that. But what was interesting was when Trump took a stand, all of a sudden, the president of Columbia said, okay, I changed my mind. We will take them back. In other words, negotiation has to be done. You got to know where your position is. You got to know where you're standing to be that. Trump does that very well in a political scene. And I think the idea that he's going to round up people, because people are saying he'll never be able to deport all these people. Well, to round them up and put them in Gitmo is going to be a lot simpler than getting back home. But just the idea that he is doing that to some is enough to discourage more from coming in. And it also makes it so that the cartel does not have such an easy job recruiting people. So I'm thankful that he's taken the stand. He's not afraid to say what some of us think.
That has been his appeal, hasn't it? He's not afraid to say the things we think or ask the questions that we all ask. Even his questions he's asked about this crash last night were the same questions that all of us as civilians are asking, and he was asking them himself on Truth Social and at the presidential White House briefing today. All right, closing thoughts or comments from you, Aaron, live from Israel tonight?
Well, just hearing what you've both been saying, it's almost like he's making people accountable again. Checks and balances. You know, we were exiled. Our people were exiled 3 times out of our land. God did that. And so there's consequences. So I think it's a good thing. And you know, with what Donald Trump is trying to put on the table by trying to get rid of 1 million Palestinians from the Gaza Strip, let's see. I'm sure that that's going to be an issue that he's going to talk about with Bibi Netanyahu next week as well. We're waiting to see the outcome of that.
Wow. The Jerusalem Post is reporting that 72% of Israelis say country has failed to learn lessons of October 7th.
Well, you know, I think it's a little bit early to judge. Let's see the process of this war.
Well, why would your people say that? Why would 72% of your own people be saying that?
Well, because there were massive failures on October the 7th. And where I guess it all depends on how you read that statement. I personally think we are learning as we're going on this war. Now, where I agree with them is some of the left-wingers who haven't woken up and they haven't learned. But a lot of left-wingers have learned and they've come over to the right. They're actually supporting our government. So I think some people have learned, but this is just a long process of learning, and we're not out of the woods yet. This is far from over. In fact, I said yesterday, up in the north, it's accelerating again. The ceasefire is over with Hezbollah. There's incursions over the Litani River area. Our Air Force is back fighting again. In Judea and Samaria, where our operatives are on a full-scale mission there. So it is far from over, but we're learning as we're going. But certainly, and we had our top general, Hezi Halevi, he resigned the other day. So he obviously, by making that decision, that's a leadership position. He's taking responsibility. So
let's see where it goes. LightToTheNationsMinistry.com, LightToTheNationsMinistry.com. Dr. Rob Lindsted is Bible Tip now, Bible TIP, which stands for Bible Truth and Prophecy, Bible Truth and Prophecy. So it's BibleTipNow.org or .com. Which one is it, Rob? .com or .org? I think they both work, actually. BibleTipNow.com, right?
Yep.
Okay, BibleTipNow.com. Thanks for listening, folks. Take care.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff operations officer, assisted the national security team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan, and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
Hey, look, it's January 29th. We are just 9 days